And here now I deliver you a special interview with Mr. Jose Fernandez, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Economic and Business Affairs. Now I should welcome him first. Welcome to the Jakarta, Mr. Fernandez. How is it? How is Jakarta?
Jakarta is always nice. This is my third trip to Indonesia in the 2 years that I've been in office, and I always like to come back here. There's a lot of energy in Jakarta.
A lot of energy, for sure. 2 days in a row. So what was your agenda, actually, here in Jakarta to talk about?
Well, you know, we have a great relationship, we believe, with Indonesia. Of course, we all know about President Obama's personal relationship with Indonesia, having lived here as a child. But we also have a very strong commercial relationship, and it's a relationship that we would like to make even better. And so I came here to talk about 3 items. Number 1, technology, what we can do in the United States together with Indonesian companies to work on technology issues. Number 2, on agriculture. There is a great desire on the part of both countries to strengthen and deepen our relationship on agriculture. And the 3rd is on infrastructure, roads, airports. I signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Industry to try and work together on infrastructure. So it was 2 days. It's short, but there's a lot to discuss, and I think there's lots we can do together.
Talking about this MOU, the MOU with the Ministry of Industry to promote infrastructure investment cooperation, could you please share more about this sector?
Well, you know, Indonesia is a country that has grown so fast that it needs what every country needs, and your government has mentioned the need for that. We all know that there's a desire here to improve the airports, to improve the roads. U.S. companies in many of these sectors, not all, but in many of these sectors are leaders. And so one of the things that we agreed to do is to work together to try and promote more American investment on the part of American companies in Indonesian infrastructure. Not just to build the projects, but also to provide the kind of technical cooperation that I think it would be useful both to the United States and to Indonesia.
In your opinion, what is actually our weakness in maybe to develop our infrastructure, especially maybe in the toll roads, seaports, or airports? How is it?
Well, you know, a country that's growing at 6.5% a year doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. And so I wouldn't call it a weakness, but I think there's a need. You know, it happens in many places. Countries grow, they get a lot of investment, they grow very fast, they become what's called around the world lower middle class countries, and then you need another jump in order to really go into the middle class. You've had great growth here. You've been able to do great work in increasing the number of Indonesians who have become middle class. You've been able to reduce poverty. But all that takes infrastructure, takes water systems, takes electricity. Your government naturally wants to provide those services, and it's going to want partners, partners from the United States and partners from other countries. So what we're trying to do is to find a mechanism whereby companies and your government can work together to identify where we can help and where we can partner. And that was the purpose of the memorandum of understanding, to create a framework for cooperation on infrastructure.
So is it already started now, or how is it?
Well, you know, it was only signed yesterday. It's hard to start today, but we've already seen a major investment by an American company, $1.5 billion by a company called Celanese. That's going to work on turning coal into ethanol. That happened. That's being negotiated. I can't say that's a result of the agreement, but we also in the days that I have been here and met with government officials from Indonesia, we've talked about what we could do, for example, in the agricultural field on post-harvest technologies. Post-harvest technologies, Iqbal, if you know, it's basically you have a great loss of food from the farm to the time it gets to the supermarket. In some cases, as much as 50%. if you can eradicate that, if you can bring that to zero, you will have doubled your food production without growing anymore. And that's, U.S. companies are leaders in post-harvest technology. So those are the things that the Memorandum of Understanding makes possible. Those are the things that I've already discussed here. And now we have to work. Now the hard work begins. And we need to start working on those things.
Okay. So food security also our problem now in Indonesia, but we'll be continue after the break. Here now still with Mr. Jose Fernandez, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for the Economy and Business Affairs, talking about U.S.-Indonesia economy and business relationship. Hello. Continue our discussion. So how is it the food security in Indonesia? Because Indonesia facing now the food security where we keep importing our food while we got so many lands that we should develop. How is it?
Well, importing food is not necessarily bad. But there's a great, because there are many countries around the world that you could say are food secure, and yet they don't grow their own food. But it is important to grow your own food. And one of the things where we believe we can work with Indonesia is on agriculture. Now, the American agriculture, despite the fact that the United States has had difficult economic years in the last few years, has actually been a star performer. American agriculture is the most fertile in the world. We produce the most per land. We also are able to do so using less chemicals and less water than in many places. Some of that technology can be applied here. We're now going through a very difficult drought, as you know, in the U.S. But 4 years ago, the drought was in Russia. So you're always going to have some problem somewhere. So every country is going to need to be more efficient in growing its crops. It's going to have to improve its agricultural methods. We can work with Indonesia on agriculture. We can work on biotechnology, for example. We had one of the meetings that I attended here was a very interesting meeting where we had Filipino farmers and regulators come here to talk to us and to the Indonesian farmers and regulators yesterday on agricultural methods. In the Philippines, Iqbal has been able to quadruple 4 times its yield of corn while using a third less water and a third less chemicals. Now, if you can do that, then you become a lot more food secure. And so they've been able to do it through biotechnology, making crops that need less water, that need less fertilizer. And therefore, if we can work with Indonesia on that basis, perhaps with the Philippines, perhaps with other countries and American companies, we can help on the food security. Because there's one thing we know, that you may have a drought, you may have a monsoon in India 1 year, and the next year it may not be in India, but you'll have another disaster someplace else. So you always have to work on improving yields and doing the most that you can with your agriculture.
So now talking about our Indonesian economic outlook, now Indonesia one of the strongest economic, maybe the third now. So how is it looking at our investment climate that is getting better? So how is the intention maybe from America?
Well, this has been a success story, Indonesia. The growth that we just heard about of 6.5 is very good, and it's actually among the best in the world. That's growth that's due to a growing middle class that provides a market, a very strong business culture here in Indonesia. But there are some things that we can work on that the U.S. can help. I mentioned infrastructure before. I think ultimately there's going to be a need to work on expanding market access for companies everywhere. One of the things that's always a point of discussion is the role of foreign direct investment, foreign investment. We believe, and we've seen it in the United States, that foreign investment brings in not just money, but it also brings you different ideas, different people. It makes you more effective. It makes you a better economy. And so one of the things that that we always talk to Indonesia about is the need to attract foreign investment. Not just because you need the money. Everybody needs some investment, but also because you do want that culture of new ideas working in your country. And so we believe, and that's one of the issues that I talk to the Indonesian government about is that we'd like to find ways to create the conditions in Indonesia to help for more American investment.
Now, the other problem in food security is our farmers' welfare. Here in Indonesia is like very low, maybe attention from the government. Do you see this is one of the obstacle also, or how is it?
I don't know enough about Indonesian farming to tell you. I do think that if with the right policies, farmers are wonderful people. You can, and they will be convinced by results. And how do you get results? You improve yields. You grow the kinds of crops that require less fertilizer, less water, so they have less expense. And so with more yield and less expense, they will benefit. Okay. And so that every country in the world, including our own, pursues those kinds of policies.
Okay. So discussion is getting more interesting, but we'll be back after